And welcome back to the Baseball Development Hub podcast. My name is Trevor Powers, and I am joined, as always, by co-host of the podcast, Dan Galati. Dan, we are recording this as well on a Thursday afternoon. It's nice to get this out of the way before dinner. How are we doing today?
Doing well, doing all right. Nice to be doing it before dinner. I would say typically I would normally have more juice, but for whatever reason, I'm lacking a little bit of juice today, so I apologize for that.
That's okay. That's what I was going to say is I'm feeling a lot better than compared to getting a nice meal in my stomach. I start to wind down for a typical night, and then it's got to strap up the microphone and the headphones and turn it back on and try to get through a 35 minutes to an hour of a podcast. But today, obviously, for anybody who clicked on this, they're going to see the title. But make sure before we get into it, you smash that subscribe button, whether you're on YouTube, whether you're on Spotify. Make sure you follow the channel so you don't miss any of our great content. This past week, we had a conversation with pitching coach Cale Johnson at Dallas Baptist University. Really insightful, quick conversation. So for anybody who's looking for a 10-minute way to learn something and learn how one of the top programs in the country does pitching development, make sure to head over to the channel and smash that subscribe button. So that leads us to today, where we're going to talk about velocity development, Dan. Obviously, it kind of pertains to our conversation of the week with Coach Cale Johnson, but also the grander picture of what we do in terms of our content is probably catered more to the pitching side than it is to the hitting side. And one of the things you're lucky enough to do is stand across some of the best pitching coaches in the country and talk about philosophies and how they utilize tech to develop velocity and how they maximize their guys to translate it onto the field. So when we talk about the overall pitching velocity conversation and kind of what you maybe have learned over your time of standing across from really smart people, what are the few takeaways that you think everybody should know about the velocity conversation?
That's a great question, a broad one, and I don't know which way I want to take it really. So, for one, I think what we have to understand, and what I've obviously learning through experience and learning from all the great minds that we get to talk to, like you said, is we've come so far in velocity development. Um, we know so much more, just like everything kind of in the game. We have so much more information. And I think the important thing that people need to understand is it's not like 25, 30, 40 years ago, going back into the 80s, we didn't know that velocity was good or we didn't have guys that threw hard. I think the fact that the information is at our fingertips so quickly and the adjustments can be made so much quicker, paired with the fact that as we've evolved as humans, the athletes are better and the athletes are better than they've ever been, especially when that comes to the pitching side of things. You said it before we started recording that the debate between radar guns about people, there are people out there who think that we aren't actually throwing harder, we just read it differently, is the dumbest argument in baseball. Like, I just don't like that argument at all. Like, people throw harder because we're better athletes, we're bigger, we're faster, we're stronger, we know more about ground force. Obviously, we have things like newt force mounds. We know more about biomechanics. We have markerless biomechanic capturing capabilities. We understand spin rate more. And by spin rate, I don't mean higher is better. I just mean we understand what it does and how to manipulate it more because we have things like edgertronic cameras. We have things like TrackMan that can give us the data. And when you get it instantly, it allows you to make adjustments in real time, which then allows you to shorten the development window, meaning get better quicker. And to me, that so leading all of that to answer your question, I think the biggest takeaway I've had is pretty much everyone knows how to do this now, and everyone is doing it. So velocity is still extremely important because what velocity does in baseball is it shrinks your margin for error, right? The less time a hitter has react, the less refined you need to be in everything else, right? The little bit less movement you can have, um, the little bit less command you can have. Now you still have to put it in the zone, but you can get away with throwing the ball in the fatter parts of the plates instead of working the corners. Guys who throw softer have to be able to manipulate the baseball more, have to be able to command it a little bit better because the chance of getting barreled up when you have more time to react is higher, right? And obviously everything changes as you go up in levels. But the biggest takeaway for me is we better figure out other ways to get guys out other than, oh, you just throw really hard, because everyone can do it. You're not separating yourself anymore if you just throw really hard. If you go back to Roll Chapman's debut, him throwing 103, 104 miles an hour in a Major League Baseball setting was unheard of. Hitters weren't seeing it. He was going to separate himself. He was going to be considered one of the best because he could just throw a fastball really, really hard. I remember him coming up not having any other pitches. Like, it was a fastball. Everything else stunk. It was terrible. Fast forward, as everyone else has now called on with people with like Driveline, Tread, companies, and really smart people, BPZ up in South Jersey. There's so many across the country, right? Tons of people that are fantastic. The guys out in St. Louis, obviously the new guys that we work with. People know how to train that stuff. Aroldis Chapman had to start throwing better secondary offerings. So to me, the biggest takeaway is going to these places, going to Dallas Baptist, going to the University of Georgia, going to Arkansas, going to Arizona. They can all develop a guy to throw hard. So now we have to find the margins. We have to attack the margins and figure out how we can get them to be more well-rounded pitchers. And I'm not saying there was ever really a point where you could only throw a fastball, if that makes sense. But velocity training, while it's still important, is one slice of the greater pie that's going to make a successful pitcher.
Well, I think the main thing is how much the hitting advancements have progressed over the last few years. That has not necessarily made velocity irrelevant because, like you said, it increases your margin for error. But the majority of hitters have now seen something or some semblance of the same velocity because while Aroldis Chapman was an outlier at the time, nobody did it. So that looked like 140, right, to those hitters. Like, that was unfathomable that somebody threw that hard. Now we train at such a high level that becoming that last point of that well-rounded pitcher is even more important for guys.
And I think it's less so even like, yes, the training, you're absolutely right. Now guys get, like, we talk to coaches all the time with things like the eye pitch and everything like they're getting 4 at bats off a starter before you even step in the box before the game starts. But how about the fact that, like, in game, let's take it at the college setting. You play in the SEC, you play on Friday night, you're seeing a guy that comes out and he's in the mid 90s to upper 90s. The 2 relievers that come in after him are in the 90s. The guy that closes the game is going to have nasty stuff in the 90s. So Saturday starter, your 95 isn't so cute anymore, right? It's not as special anymore. So even before the training, let's look at the fact that, like, every at bat you're taking, essentially, when you get to that level of play, when you get to Division I college baseball, and then forget the major leagues, you got guys coming out of bullpen you never heard of in games where they're down by 10, pumping 97.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, this is their guy for when they're down by 8-9 runs in Major League Baseball coming out of the bullpen. This guy just got called up. He's got 17 innings, and we were talking about it. You turned on the College World Series this year. You watched LSU bring in a kid. I can't remember his name. I apologize. We're 2 months since that happened. But kid comes marching out of the bullpen. He's a transfer from a mid-major. He's got like 17 innings on the year, and he's throwing 94-mile-an-hour turbo sinkers. It's like, this is LSU's guy that has 17 innings on the year. So your 94 is a household thing. So again, yes, to your point, and add on to the fact that the training now, we're seeing high velocities in the cages every single day as hitters. The 94-mile-an-hour off the mound isn't going to surprise anyone anymore. That's just commonplace.
Yeah, 100%. And that allows it to be so much easier for those hitters to adjust. And again, I think that's the beauty of where the sport has come, where it is not just as simple as throw as hard as you can over the heart of the plate. I think there was a time and place maybe in the revolution where that was the priority. And I think even probably MLB organizations were just like, he throws hard, give him a roster spot, or he throws hard, draft him in the first round. That's an 80 grade fastball because it registers triple digits. And how far we've come in terms of understanding how truly to value a fastball and how truly different movement patterns of the pitch can impact, where a 92, and I guess this is a more pitching development conversation than it is velocity development conversation, but my fascination recently has been Roki Sasaki as he's transitioned to the MLB in America. In the World Baseball Classic, he was 101, 102, right? But everybody knew it was a dead zone-ish heater, but he was able to get away with it because of the velocity that he'd had. He struggled last year. In his last year in Japan, he's come over, and now the fastball is more 93 to 95, and he's getting punished at every level of professional baseball through his rehab assignment. And again, I'm sure command's a little off. I'm sure it's kind of fluky in some way, shape, or fashion, but it brought me back to a conversation that we had on here about Paul Skeens and his draft value, right? Because Paul had obviously 101 in the tank. He's a mutant human being. But the conversation around his fastball and is it truly an 80 grade? Is it truly going to translate to success at the next level? And I thought Sasaki's the more example of the opposite end, that can this guy succeed at 92? And why can't this guy succeed at 92 because of the fastball shape and how it portrays? Or is somebody going to be able to maintain that velocity long term? Like we still see guys like Jacob deGrom, we still see guys in the upper 90s that are older in age, where maybe they can still have success with the velocity even if their shape isn't elite. So that's a long way of saying of how does pitch shape and movement profiles create more margin for error where maybe it's not all tied into the velocity development.
Yeah, and I think when you start talking about the big leagues, the whole conversation changes from college baseball, because in the big leagues the margin for error is so slim that like those guys that are in the box are freaks of nature. They don't care how hard you throw. If guys started throwing 150, I truly, truly believe this. If guys started throwing 150 miles an hour,
only 10% of the league could play Pepper right now.
I knew you were gonna. I knew it. I was gonna avoid that. But if guys started throwing 150 miles an hour next year, hitters would figure out a way to start bailing it up, and you would still, the Aaron Judges of the world, Shohei Ohtani's, Bryce Harper, like those guys that are freaks in Major League Baseball, they would be like, fine, we just hit against 150 now. People would be really mad because strikeouts would rise even more. But I think, especially when you talk about it at the college game, that's where command becomes so important. And for me, like I feel like we were a little bit different going back to that Skeens draft year, where you certainly were raising really good questions looking at the profile of the fastball, and just because it's 102, is it that good? And it was like, yeah, but he throws it into a Coke bottle. Like that's what makes it so. That's where it's crazy, where it was so Steven Strasburg-esque. And that's where I used to be like, this is where the comparisons are fair between Skeens as a college prospect and Strasburg, where it was like Strasburg was the best one we had seen in recent memory coming out of college. And where I agree with Skeens is like, because Strasburg used to be able to do the same thing. It was like glove side, arm side, up, down. Like he had every quadrant. And I think it's interesting listening to Caleb Cotham talk, who, I think is one of the best pitching coaches in all of baseball at any level, talk about like, sometimes in the development where we're at in the stages of development right now in baseball, we try and do too much and we get too special, where we have all of this stuff. And like, if you can command a pitch to a spot 100% of the time, you can be one of the best pitchers. So let's start there. And if you're going down into youth levels, like let's start there. If you can throw, and even height, let's take beyond youth, because youth, that's like learning proprioception and how to do all that. But like, let's take high school and into your early stages of your college career. If you can hit a fastball to one side of the plate and just dominate that, and every time you're going to be able to put it where you need to one quadrant, to one spot, start there and then build off of that. And I think that's where, when you start asking that question of like, can Roki Sasaki succeed, or can guys succeed at 92? It's like, yes, you just have to be able to command the baseball better. And then what I think you were leading into there is like manipulating it then. And I think the trend that we started to see is having multiple fastballs. Now, you look at the best pitchers in the game right now. Paul Skeens throws a four-seamer, and he throws that just ridiculous splinker thing, and he can command both. So now, back in the day, right, you used to be like, okay, well, we need speed adjustments. We need 10 miles an hour difference. Well, what if we can throw something similar velocities and have them have two different shapes? Now, if you throw a dead zone four-seamer, it's not a dead zone because you can also sink it. So now they're guarding against something that's the same velocity that's maybe sinking. And then if your four-seamer doesn't, play up in the zone or have elite characteristics as far as spin or kind of the way it looks to a hitter as rising, like if you can sink that at or around the same velocity, that fastball, the four-seamer, now becomes that much better because they're having to guard against both. Or if you can cut it, and sink it. And you see a guy like Zach Wheeler, who we'll see what he's kind of in a weird spot right now, obviously with the blood clot, but guy like Zach Wheeler, what's made him so good in the second half of his career since he got to Philadelphia is he now, instead of just throwing 98 to 101 like he used to with the Mets, he's sinking his fastball. He has the four seamer that he still can work up in the zone, and he cuts it. He's throwing three different fastballs that are all at or around the same velocity. So now you're having to protect pretty much every quadrant of the plate at one velocity. That's before we get into any secondary stuff.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the ultimate complaint that I have about Stuff Plus is it doesn't quantify how specifically how repertoire can work together to confuse the hitter, right? Corbin Burns is the prototypical example, and shocker, the Milwaukee Brewers were semi ahead of this, and Devin Williams is another great example of a guy who needed his other pitches that may have graded out below average to complement the pitch that was his out pitch, right? Corbin Burns, if you've ever watched Corbin Burns pitch when he was with Milwaukee, and obviously he's dealt with injuries since leaving, but even in Baltimore to a certain extent, what had made him so successful is he had an elite cut ride fastball, right? It was a rising cutter, and when he first started throwing it, it was elite and he was dominant. And all he really needed was that. And I used to get frustrated sometimes when you look at his overall profile and be like, why is he still throwing this sinker 16% of the time? Why? And then you go watch him pitch against the Cubs on Sunday Night Baseball one time. And what the Milwaukee Brewers do so well in game planning is they zig when you think they're going to zag, and they zag when they think you're going to zig. And what I mean by that is he goes, cutter, cutter, you're 0-2. Well, what he does is when you're thinking, oh, cutter again, further extended, he starts the sinker off the plate, the below average stinker by Stuff Plus. It runs back, strikeout looking. You're walking back to the dugout with your tail tucked between your legs. Right? Devin Williams, same thing. He struggled with the Yankees, and I know he's struggled again since the midseason. But one of the things the Yankees have prided themselves on, and I respect Matt Blake as a pitching coach so much, is throw your best stuff the most, right? Throw your best stuff. And so if you're Devin Williams, let's just fling that changeup in there 75% of the time. If you look at his first couple outings with the Yankees where he really struggled, his changeup percentage was up. And that's not a high in zone pitch for him. And guys were just spitting on him. Once they realized that he was throwing the changeup too much, they just stopped swinging at it, which then made his fastball play down. Devin Williams was in that perfect middle ground where the changeup would be 40%, the fastball would be, 45 to 50%, and then he'd have his other offerings there as well, just to keep hitters off balance enough to respect the fastball that might grade out as below average, or it might not have elite velocity, but being able to have something that comes from the same window and moves in separate directions just to confuse hitters. And that was something we talked about with Coach Hefner off record, was how it's not always about how elite the pitches are. When you have two pitches moving at the same velocity and one does this, and if you're not watching on YouTube, one goes left and one goes right, and the hitter thinks it's going to go left, but the one goes right, and it's the 15% usage pitch, that misses a barrel. It might not generate the nastiest sword whiff in the world, but it misses a barrel, soft contact, roller to the third baseman, easy out on the first pitch of the at-bat. That's how you win as a pitcher. That's how you become a well-rounded arm.
Yeah, and I think that's what's always fascinating to me about trends, especially in baseball, where it could happen in other sports. I just don't understand other sports the way I understand baseball, where when trends happen in baseball, and you bring up the one that, the Yankees really have prided themselves on, and we saw it, right? It was like 2018 through 2021. It was throw your best pitch the most, no matter what, right? Shane Bieber won a Cy Young doing this, right? It was like, just throw it the most, throw it the most, throw it the most, throw it the most. I don't necessarily think that's the right thing to do anymore, right? And I was all aboard that trend back then as well, where it's like, we're going to throw the best pitch the most, forget everything else, right? We'll mix it in there, we'll show it, but why would we throw not our best pitch in big counts, behind, ahead, 3-2, no matter the count, throw the best one, whether it's off speed or not? I don't necessarily think that's the best game plan, as you said, anymore, because the offense has now adjusted, and like you just mentioned, where Devin Williams is sitting and you can just spin on the changeup, that changeup becomes way less effective when guys can just spin on it because it's not an in-zone pitch. We have to be able to command it. What it did open us up to, which I think is the good part of this, and what's always funny with trends, is we always go way too far at the start, and then we have to come back to the middle, is like, you can throw your off-speed stuff more, right? We went from back in the day where it was like, set everything up based off the fastball, right? oh, here comes a fastball most of the time. We're going to throw it low and away at the knees, lower third, keep it there. We'll throw everything else off that. That worked. That was great. Hitters adjusted to that. We found out a way to do it. So then it was throw the best pitch the most. Hitters were still thinking in the fastball thing. That worked for a couple of years. Hitters adjusted to, hey, this guy's going to be, we have percentages. We can mimic the spin off with the machines we have. We can, we started using hack attacks more. Like all those things, hitters adjusted. So now what do? Well, it's good to spin still, and it's good to spin more or throw your change up more or whatever. I think the thing that, like you're saying, and we've been kind of hammering here, is like, now what's the next adjustment for pitchers? I do think it's multiple fastballs, be able to throw multiple fastballs. And we kind of did the same thing where it was all velocity, all velocity, all velocity. Okay, well, now the hitters can hit that velocity. Now what's next? And it's kind of going back to, okay, well, we have to be able to pitch. You have to have pitchability. And I think the best way to start attacking pitchability is learning how to throw a sinker, a two-seamer, a four-seamer, cutter, just little ways to get to manipulate the baseball just a little bit to get off barrels. Because at the end of the day, the one thing that has never changed about the game of baseball is just try and avoid the barrel. If you're a pitcher, keep guys off time and try to avoid the barrel. Yes, there was also when all of this started too, all of them, by all of this, I mean the velocity training, the tech, all of this stuff, which has greatly made our pitchers better. Pitching Ninja also showed up around that time. It started posting all the nasty stuff and the swords, and these young pitchers were just chasing that. You don't get an extra strike for making a guy look stupid. You don't get an extra out for getting a strikeout. Like, disrupt timing, move the ball off the barrel. You're going to be a really successful, really good pitcher. And you're seeing it come back a little bit in Major League Baseball. With some of the top arms, you're seeing it come back a little bit, right? And that's why I never fully bought into Stuff Plus.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, at the top pitchers, yes. And what people, and like this is such a conversation that shouldn't be had, because so many people think when you say avoid the barrel, you're preaching, oh, you should pitch to contact and try to chase off. Whiffs are missing the barrel too, right? Like there's multiple ways to skin the cat,
yes.
and we'd prefer whiffs, right, in the grand scheme, because
no bad
what's the batting average?
Happen.
Yeah, exactly. If a guy swing and miss, what's the batting average on balls in play, right? 0, right? Doesn't happen. And errors can't happen. We can't overthrow. We prefer whiffs. That's why the whiff revolution became a thing. But I think what, again, we're coming back to is there's an art to guys that also can put hitters in enough conflict where they get just soft enough conflict or contact where instead of that ball ending up in the seats, it's caught, right? Like Seth Lugo is a great example of a guy who has 7 average pitches, right? 7 average pitches. And honestly, probably 2 of them are below average in terms of how they move, in terms of the average of how his changeup moves or how his four seam moves. But what he does is he keeps hitters in conflict all the time because they don't know if it's going to cut. Is it going to ride? Is it going to sink? Is it going to dip? Is it going to 12-6, 11? Like whatever he's able to do, he's able to manipulate the baseball to do that. And sometimes you get those front foot swings where that ball that if the guy only had to focus on 3 pitches is probably in the seats, 15 rows deep, he has to ride out his front side. And instead of crushing it, he flies out to left, right? That's an out. At the end of the day, right? Like, is it the best pitch to throw in that situation? Well, as long as a guy is in off balance and you're disrupting timing from the hitter and getting off that barrel just a little bit, you're doing your job as a pitcher. And I think there's starting to become a value. And of course, it's a veteran guy like that. And I think that's part of why you see pitchers have so much more success later in their career is because they start to learn the art of that, right? I don't need to have the nastiest stuff each and every time I rear back and throw, right? There's like, again, guys like DeGrom are blessed that at 37, they're able to rear back and throw 101 by guys, right? Not everybody's able to do that. But the really elite pitchers that extend their career, the Zach Wheelers of the world, are able to understand how having multiple fastballs in the same speed window can get that just missed contact when he doesn't have his best stuff. And then when he shows up to the ball yard with his best stuff, 12, 14 punch outs, dominant through 8 innings. One of the most impressive things we've seen on a baseball field.
Yeah, and I think it's too as guys get older, and Grom even falls into this bucket too. And I think that Look, when you get to that level, like when you're in college, you can just rear back and throw. And that's what a lot of what is taught now, because we are building kind of cyborgs a little bit. All these guys throw so hard, and it, college level hitters, when you get deep, down to the bottom of the order, I don't care what level you're at. Like even if you're in the SEC, those guys aren't as good, and you can get away with like just pump 99. Just pump 99. I'd love to see, you could probably do this one day if you're ever really bored. Like, how many off speed or non fastballs did Paul Skeens throw to 7, 8, 9s in conference play? Because he could just sit there and be like 101, eat up.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do that. But because it's successful in college, you might as well. But you can't do it at the big league level. So I think as guys age, like DeGrom, like Wheeler, what's so impressive about them is that 98's there. Zach Wheeler, he has 98 in the tank. He goes to it when he needs it. And that's kind of turning back the clock, because Randy Johnson and Pedro did throw 98. But you would also see like 93, 94, 95. And then it was like Pedro or Randy Johnson felt like they needed it. They would go get it. They would go get the upper 90s fastball. And it wasn't every single pitch. And I think that's also why guys like that could kind of command the ball a little better. It's easier when you're not reaching back every time to
Even for
command the
you and
baseball.
I, right?
Yeah.
Like we could rear back for 76 right now. It's not going to be accurate. I could throw 68 straight.
Correct.
No different for those guys, right? And Justin Verlander early in his career, when he used to sit 91, 93 and then ramp it up at the end of the games and use that kind of adrenaline dump in his last inning and ramp it up to 100, was always one of the coolest things to see. And it is one of those things where I think, and rightfully so, now I think you should be closer to that higher end more times than not. But
Sure.
at 90% with a good command is better than what those guys were doing, which is probably closer to like 80% with like looking for double plus command and really putting that baseball where they have it. And I think that's where you start to see the gaps between what are aces at the major league level compared to mid rotation, compared to bottom of the rotation, because I think there's a surface level of stuff that is required to be in a starting rotation. Those guys, as you get further down, start to look like more of those, hey, sling it and just hope it goes over the strike zone, and what's our stuff look like, and usually we can only blow it out for 4 innings, or maybe we only have 2 pitches that can only get us 2 times through the order, compared to a Zach Wheeler who, because he has so many different versions of the fastball, has that 3rd time through the order capability, can go to the well on a extra breaking ball, can go to the well to his changeup if that's what he wasn't using first time through the order. And again, all we're talking about is the traditional, what we grew up on as starting pitcher, right? Like the ability to change and adjust throughout the game and develop a 3rd pitch to use 3rd time through the order and offset that stuff. The only different is MLB organizations understand that the guys that are 3rd, 4th, and 5th in their rotation only need to get them 12 outs, because we have cyborgs to roll after them that also can just go 1 inning and throw 1 or 2 pitches in the strike zone. That is nasty enough to get out. And then we go to the next cyborg, and then the next cyborg, and then the next cyborg. And we get through that. And then when we turn it back, we need a Zach Wheeler. And that's why in the postseason, those guys are so important, because we need a Zach Wheeler to get 3 times through the order, because he's the only guy we can trust to do that for an extended period of time.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing with it too now is like when we're evaluating pitchers, I would hope we're at a point now that the first thing we look at isn't velocity, right? Because there was a long stretch of time where when we would evaluate a pitcher, the very first thing we look at was velo, right? What's your velocity? And that's when we were recruiting, when we were evaluating our own roster, is mainly what my thought is, because you have so much information on the guys on your roster that you should now look at what kind of stuff can they build, right? And like velocity is certainly a piece of it. And there is a floor. Like there's certainly a floor for velocity. And again, I'm not out here banging the drum that like velo, we shouldn't just be chasing velo. No, if you can throw 99 miles an hour, please do. Throw it. Throw it a lot.
First and foremost. Right? Throw that first and foremost and figure out the rest.
The point being is the guy that throws 99 might not be as good as the guy that throws 93. And because of everything we have now, Kinetrex mounds with force plates in them to understand, how they're moving, Edgertronic cameras, TrackMan, markerless motion capture. We can understand stuff, efficiency, command, all better with this stuff. So the guy that throws 93, right, can be better depending on what his other stuff is and how it complements each other. Because if you're just a guy who's going to spray 99, like, you're going to have success for your whole life, and you'll probably even become a professional baseball player because you throw 99 miles an hour. But there is certainly a cap to your ceiling because, again, it's not all about velocity. So when we evaluate pitchers, I would hope that that is not the first thing we look at anymore. Again, it's certainly a piece of the puzzle, but it's like, let's look at, well, what does the fastball do? What does the other stuff do in complement to the fastball? We talked to a coach the other day who was talking about evaluating pitchers on Saturday. We were talking to a coach who was talking about evaluating pitchers, and he said, yeah, like, I got a call. Why didn't I have this guy high? And he was like, yeah, he throws 94 miles an hour in high school, but his breaking ball's 71.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he can't throw anything else. He just has that. And, like, so there are guys that have other stuff that's better than just one fastball, one pitch. And I think that's what I would like to see. My hope is that, and I think that is what's happening at the major league level, certainly. And again, there's always a spot for the guys that throw 99. There always will be, because, again, you can throw 99 down the middle and miss barrels because it's really hard to hit that.
Well, even to build off that, those guys are, you go to a facility, right? One of the big facilities. I'm not going to pick one. There's guys that throw 99 in there right now. And guess what's happening right now?
Right. They're free agents.
Baseball.
Yeah.
Baseball is happening right now. So, like, even that is not, because exactly what you're saying. Like, if you're a young kid coach, high school coach, middle school coach, and you listen to this and you're saying, well, my kid throws 68 and he can command it into a Red Sox.
There is
a range, and there's a range that you have to be within to start, right? Us recruiting, when we were recruiting, if you weren't hitting, like, again, if you went to Tom Riley and said, I really like the way this kid pitched at Diamond Nation this weekend, and he was like, all right, what do you got on? What's the first thing you said? You're going to say he was 72 to 74, right? Like, no. Hey, he hit this benchmark. Like, hey, he flashed 86. Okay, now let me hear the rest. Athletic mover, repeatable arm action, look good, played shortstop earlier in the week. Remember that? Really good swing. Like, all of those things that now, okay, yeah, now we can start to build off of that, right? So there is a surface level range, but beyond that, once you get into the range, and that's range by level, right? If you're a D3 arm, you can get away with 82. If you're a D2 arm, you can get away with 85. If you're in the SEC, you can't be 85, right? Like, those guys have to get to that benchmark of 94.
You better have some kind of outlier, and usually that means you're scraping your knuckles on the ground when you throw it.
Yes.
That's about your
100%.
only shot.
Yeah,
like
100%. And being able to find within that range where you need to be, but then it's about becoming well-rounded beyond that, which brings me to kind of to the question that I want to tie the knot on this. One of the things that's the most frustrating part of trying to watch youth-ish baseball, really it kind of bleeds into professional baseball a little bit, is that MLB organizations kind of understand the fact that if they throw darts at the wall enough times at guys that throw 98 to 102, one of them's going to hit. And whether that's the 17th rounder, the first rounder, the 12th rounder, the college kid, the high school kid, right? So the surface level of understanding, like you've talked about several times, velocity eliminates the ability to make more, like, your margin for error becomes so much smaller, right? Like, you can miss, you can throw it down the middle, everything like that. You're able to do all these things and get away with it. So what MLB orgs have rightfully done is say, let's take these rocket ship potential guys, put them in a position to develop this nasty stuff and see which one figures it out, right? And that has bled to every level. I think SEC coaches do the same exact thing. But where you set apart the best from the worst, and again, a great example, I just wrote about this. I previewed 2026 draft prospects today. I was writing about Liam Peterson. Liam Peterson has walked 6 per 9 and 4 per 9 in 2 years. He throws 100. But there's certain guys that come from a certain program in college baseball that consistently throw 100, but consistently not put up numbers. And then there's another program in the SEC West, or what is now the SEC altogether, in Arkansas, that has kids that throw 100 but don't walk the world. They have other kids that throw 91 and get outs. Vanderbilt's the same way. Doesn't matter. They have kids who throw 100 who don't walk. They have guys who throw. So that's where the coaching comes in, and being able to take that guy that may throw 100 or may have 100 in the tank or maybe 92 to 94 and say, we're going to maximize you, not just taking these flyers on guys and then not seasoning them and developing them to be the most well-rounded pitcher they can be. And it has made parts of the game sometimes unwatchable when it's uncompetitive with no strikes being thrown and it's just slop across the game.
Yeah, that's the conundrum we're in, because you could sit here and say, like, don't put all of your focus in velocity training because of all the points we've laid out in the first 35 minutes of us sitting here talking. But until professional organizations stop just putting that number one and stop, like the point you just made, and of course they're going to do that. They're going to throw as many darts as they can because they can afford to. And the thing is because we've gotten so good at training the velocity, those guys grow on trees. Like you said, there's guys at big facilities right now in August throwing 98 without a team because we have so many of them. So, like, how can I sit here and say, oh, you want to play professional baseball? Well, don't put all your eggs in the velocity basket when that's your easiest highway and the easiest, access to professional baseball, if you're a pitcher, is to throw 1 billion miles an hour. So go figure out how to do it. Go train and put all your eggs in that basket, because you're at least going to get a look. There's going to be scouts that are going to come and want you to throw no matter where you are if you're throwing that hard. So that's where the conundrum comes in, because I do think, until Major League orgs stop kind of just valuing that first and foremost and over everything, then you're never going to kind of win that battle of, like, we'll stop putting your eggs in that basket. But to me, like, it's the proprioception of being able to repeat the way your body moves to consistently throw the baseball where you want to is starting in 2025 is starting to become the most important thing again. And, like, we'll see where it goes, because I think we've gotten to the point now where we can train you to throw 97. There are people out there, there are athletes out there who can throw 97 and organize their body over and over again in the same exact way. And more of them, I guess. There's always been those guys. Yes. Like I said, Randy Johnson and Pedro were those guys. Jacob deGrom is that guy. Like, Zach Wheeler's that guy. Reek Skubal.
Yeah.
Paul Skeens. Like, those guys exist. They already do. But I think we're going to start seeing more and more of those. So it's like, to me, that's the most important thing. But until you stop just valuing, again, like, pro organizations are going to sign the guy that can spray 99, and who cares if he throws 40%. There's my favorite reliever in college baseball right now. I won't throw him. I'm kind of going to throw him to the bus, so I won't say him. If you've heard us on here, you probably know who it is. He throws 97, throws has a big league slider, 2-mile row, could throw it 100% of the time if he could figure out how to commit. He's a reliever for a reason, because he has blow up outings. Because help me if you I don't remember the number exactly. Was it 24 walks in 43 innings? It was something crazy. It was like,
I think it was 35.
Like 35 and 40. Yeah, it's like he's almost walking a guy an inning. Well, he's going to get drafted.
Oh, yeah.
He's going to get drafted because he's a big league slider and he throws 97 miles an hour. And the big league teams are like, well, we're going to take a chance on him because it's ridiculous. And he's fun to watch when he's on. But there are times where he comes out and it's like, you got to get him out of there after 4.
Well, and even to defend 38 walks in 48 innings, even to defend big league orgs, guess what? 38 walks, if you don't get hit, you can get away with 38 walks. Like, that same pitcher happened to give up only, like, his whip wasn't terrible with bad walk numbers, right? Like what you would expect. So what you can get away with is, guess what? If, this guy, you see this with a lot of big league relievers that do walk 7 per 9 and go out there, and sure, maybe they're not your reliable closers that you throw in a hairy situation, but if they're only walking 1 per inning,
go ahead, walk your guy.
Go walk your guy. Just punch out the rest of them. And I don't blame them, right? Like, there is the coaching side of me, and then there's the I want to work in a front office side of me, right? And I have both sides because I do draft evaluation, and then I hop on and have conversations like this. If I was running an MLB org, I would be taking flyers on every guy that threw us hard or had the nastiest slider and hoping, again, one of them. And the problem in this space is you don't know which one of them. So many people want to invest first-round picks in pitchers, and they blow up in their face. Then the 12th rounder, like Tariq Skubal, becomes the best pitcher in Major League Baseball. right? Like for every Paul
Yeah, but
Skeens,
like
there's a Tariq
there is,
Skubal
because there is no science to it, right? There is
because
no
there is no
exact, which is why
science.
Paul
Yep,
Skeens was the second overall pick.
first.
Was Pirates first? Okay, I always get
Yes,
confused with Cruz or him went first. I
Cruz was
couldn't remember
second
who was it.
to the
Cruz was
Nationals.
second.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah. So Paul Skeens goes number 1 overall.
yeah.
Great job, Pirates. Tariq Skubal goes 12th round. Great
Mm-hmm.
job, Tigers. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's what makes it so complicated. Is like that's a draft conversation for another day. But like, yeah, you just taking the shot at the guys that throw 100 makes
Yes,
a ton of sense, and they're going to
makes a ton
continue
of
to do
sense.
it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and then again, to continue down this path, Riley Pint went fourth overall. Never made it out of Double A, right? So it is not an exact science, which is why you see teams like the Orioles that don't draft pitchers in the first round, because they know with a hitter, I can quantify what they are a lot more. And that's including injury and health and their ability to just be available. Pitchers, we think we can find guys in the 12th and the 5th and the free agent market in all these different avenues. And that's a long way to get me to my coaching side, right? Learn your ability to create that force, right? Don't go chasing velocity. Like if you are chasing velocity at 160 pounds, like Dan or I in high school when we were there, and we're just trying to rip 95, and maybe we do, we probably aren't going to be the best version of ourselves. The way you develop velocity, and this was said by a smart man in Matt Hobbs, the best velocity program is growing up,
Yep.
getting stronger, the ability
Yep.
to move weight, right? Again, so how do we train velocity the best way? So don't maybe get tied into what is going to make the pro scouts interested in me. Take your body for what it is and start that development track. Again, I was a 5'7", 150-pound kid. I should have never been thinking about professional baseball. That doesn't mean I can't maximize what my body's able to do. Use the information, go get stronger, go be able to receive force, do things like jumps, explosive rotations, squat a lot of weight, split squat, move heavy weight, and then you're creating more, your body's ability to create more force. And then maybe what mine was 84 at one point becomes 89. And then who knows, maybe I'm a rotational athlete, because it's not like there aren't guys that are built like me that pitch in the big leagues. Maybe it becomes 97, right? So don't get hyper fixated on what the velocity is. Train your body to be the most well-rounded it can be, and then take the information of how you create force and maximize that and do it the right way. And that's how you become the most well-rounded, healthy pitcher that you can be.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, you just hit it right on the head right there. It's like you have to, again, well-rounded. Well-rounded is the thing that I keep coming back to, because I think that's the most important thing. And like you said, if you just try and force the velocity thing, again, that is the highway, but you have to go about training it the right way. And, we've gotten so good at training that I don't think, just like everything else, I don't think there's a reason why we can't train pitchability and velocity all together if you have the resources at your disposal, right? And we've been to how many schools now that have the resources at their disposal, right? So like all across colleges, like, and I think they are, like, I think a lot of we are
Yes.
seeing it, but I also do still think we're seeing a little bit too much of, I mean, you mentioned it. There's a school that always comes to mind where it's like, yeah, paper, the stuff is really good. And like, if you pull up a bullpen report, like, stuff is ridiculous. Well, why isn't it translating into the game? It's like, why can't you go out there? Why is your team ERA so high? Because are we not working on pitchability? I don't know what they do. We haven't gotten a peek behind that curtain. I don't know what the pitchability. I don't know what the pitchability is there. Like, I don't know what they're working on. I think we have the resources. Like, when I look at and I learn more about Kinetrax and ground force and all that, and talk to Wes Johnson, and I asked Wes Johnson straight up, like, can you translate ground force into command? And he was like, absolutely. Absolutely. Right? He said it flat out. He's like, yes, you can. There are ways to look at this information and figure out who can command it, because you can have repeatability. You can also be super efficient. Look at Paul Skeens. Paul Skeens' timing is so good, and he uses the ground so good that he throws 100 miles an hour and he throws it where he wants to pretty much every pitch. So that's, to me, where we got to get to next. Now, I know everyone doesn't have these resources. Not many people have a mound with force plates built into them. You don't all have Newt force mounts. So that's fine. But there's other ways, like you said, get in the weight room. You want to train velocity, get into the weight room.
Yeah. Well, that was going to be my point, is because the reality is the majority don't have access to that information. The majority are in the private sector and things like that. And this is somebody who's spent time around a facility. We spend more time on the mound and throwing plyos and throwing med balls off the mound and doing water bag stuff and doing
All
bands
great.
and all great and valuable than we do in the weight room. The best pitchers spend a 1-to-1 time
Yes.
in the weight room, at least
Yes.
1-to-1
Yes.
in the weight room and in throwing. And this is what youth pitchers don't do enough. So, okay, now we're dedicating. You want to do all the glitz, the glamour, the pull downs, the plyos, the med balls, the water bags, all that stuff that your specialized velocity development coach is doing. You need to spend as much time in the weight room. The other thing is because I know each and every one of you aren't going to your coach every freaking day. You need to throw every single day outside of that as well. So then you need to spend an extra amount of time banding, throwing, light toss, long days, whatever it is that you need to do, a full ramp up and then a full throw day. That's how we gain development the right way and continue to be the best version of ourselves. So many people want to chase these numbers, and this is why freshmen don't succeed when they get to college campuses. Because, again, hate to tie back into the Matt Hobbs conversation, but this is everywhere you go. Why does a freshman lose 6 miles per hour of velocity when they get on campus? It's because they didn't throw every day in high school. Sure, when they went out to that showcase, they were 95 to 97, or for what we recruited, they were 80, 87 to 89. But then they spent 3 weeks in a cafeteria, not mom and dad's cooking. They spent 3 weeks on our daily program of weightlifting 5 days a week and then throwing 6 days a week at least, and then being expected to throw on day 7. And guess what? Their body had never done it before. So then we see a decrease. And then the hope is obviously that once they get through the muck there a little bit, there's the increase to blow beyond what we were when we came in as a physical specimen. That doesn't happen very always, right? And if kids come in with that preparation of the ability to withstand work and the just again the withstand, like even your light days, right? Because a light day, you know better, you've mapped these days. A light day in college is still core velocity belt, band, light toss, and plyo work, right?
Oh, for sure. Like a light,
Yeah.
yeah, a light day is so much, and I think so much of that is because, again, if you're the best pitchers move efficiently and consistently, right? So like if you can repeat what you're doing in an efficient manner, that's gonna like that right there is the base of any good pitcher. And like that's what leads to all the things we're talking about. That's what leads to command, that helps with velocity, that helps with stuff, everything. If you're moving efficiently and consistently, like you've got it figured out. Movement is king, and consistently being able to do that. Well, how do you do that? Like you said, in those light days, you do those other drill works to help organize your
Mm-hmm.
body, you work on the deficiencies that you might have. But I think the biggest thing too, before you even get into like even go too far down that path, is building a routine
Mm-hmm.
and understanding what your routine is. Because, the more of a routine you build, the easier it is to change. If you're just picking up a baseball and throwing every day when you do need something or need to make an adjustment, it's a lot harder if you don't have a routine built in to change off of that and add and subtract things from that routine. So like I, I know it's hard for younger kids, young guys, high school guys, if you don't have a lot of coaching, if you're not paying a bunch of money for the specialized stuff, but building a routine and then being extremely dedicated to the routine. And like you said, like that includes everything. That includes the weight room. And
Mm-hmm.
so you have to have the routine.
Mm-hmm. I mean, again, if you're listening this far and you're a young pitcher, right? One of the things that we do is, yes, when we go to Dallas Baptist and when we go to Arkansas and when we go to these places like that, they don't necessarily, like, they talk about the tech that they have. But each and every one of those pitching coaches know at the core that the routine and what they do from a med ball, from a band, from a daily routine is the foundation to their pitcher's success. Go watch our content. Like, if you have any questions, you want to reach out. Like, I'm not going to say that we'll sit down here and map out a 7-day routine for them, but like if you're confused, like it's there, right? That's what free access to information is, and that's why we do what we do, is because we're trying to educate people. And again, do most of our videos tie around Newt Force, Kinetrax, TrackMan, Edgertronic, and how that translates to development? Yeah, of course. But go look for these items that are free and start to build the foundation of even just as simple as crossover symmetry, right? A band routine that you can do every day that's going to strengthen your arm and strengthen what you have. And those are not the most expensive things in the world, right? And then the next step is a plyo routine. Again, Driveline has a ton of free PDFs on plyo routines, right? You don't have to be the most elaborate. You don't have to go through all these details. Just pull up, walkthroughs, step backs, whatever it is to get the arm primed and ready. Med balls are as simple as they can be. Just go to YouTube and watch some strength and conditioning guy talk about rotation, rotational throws, slams, all the things like that. Boom, you just built in your routine. And then play catch from 100 feet one day, 250 feet one day, 50 feet one day, right? Like start to map that out. You just built your routine. And obviously that's for people that can't afford coaches, right? Like the private sector is so expensive. That's why we're passionate about doing what we do, is because we know not everybody can afford that stuff. So go build something out of the information that's accessible to them. But Dan, we've extended a little bit longer than we usually intend to, but I thought it was a really good conversation, especially tying in, how to balance that velocity development for especially young athletes. But do you have any closing thoughts that you would like to leave with our listeners as we wrap up today?
No, I think that velocity is important. It's still king, but hitters are catching up. So you better find a different way to get outs, just other than just relying on throwing it as hard as you can.
Yep. Be the best version of yourself. If you're 5'6", 140 pounds, don't try to be a 100-mile-per-hour thrower. It's most likely not in the cards for you, but that doesn't mean you can't get outs. And just because you can't play professionally baseball, it doesn't mean you can't be a good Division III pitcher and get outs at a high level. Be open to those ideas. Be open to so many different ways to skin the cat and so many different ways to develop. Don't be hyper fixated on what we see and chasing the development and chasing that. Be in the confines of what your body is capable of doing first and foremost, and it's going to translate to the success that you're looking for long term. And most importantly, the best ability is availability. And as we chase things that our body is not capable of withstanding, we lose the opportunity to play baseball, which is, we don't play to train, right? We don't wake up every day and say, I can't wait to throw plyo balls against a wall. Last time I checked, that's not what we played baseball for. We want to get outs. We want to punch guys out. We want to be productive players on our teams, and that's what we're chasing. And the best way to do that is finding out what your body is capable of doing. If you're listening this long, you probably should be subscribed to the channel. But if not, make sure you're following on all social channels, including Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. We have a ton of great content coming out on the YouTube channel, so make sure you're subscribing so you don't miss any of that. And we'll see you next time on the Baseball Development Hub.